Welcome to Shatter.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. She said it so casually that the whole table went silent for me, even though everybody else kept laughing. We were at a small after-hours gathering her office threw at a bar they liked, the kind with dim lights and cheap appetizers. She leaned in toward her friend, smirking, and said, "Relax, it's just a guy from work." Then she added, quieter but loud enough for me to hear, "He's just easier to talk to." Nobody looked my way. Nobody had to. Something inside me just locked. I didn't argue. I didn't ask who she meant. I didn't ask why she needed someone else to talk to when she'd barely looked at me all week. I just went quiet. On the drive home, she scrolled through her messages, her face lit by her phone like she was somewhere far from the passenger seat. We stopped at McDonald's, because that used to be our little routine after long days. Tonight, the silence was the only thing that felt familiar. She barely touched her fries. She kept smiling at her screen. She didn't notice me watching her reflection in the window. Later, at home, she threw on an episode on Disney Plus like always, that background noise she used instead of conversation. I sat beside her, pretending I didn't see the new message pop up on her phone from someone named Daniel. She tilted her phone away with a quick reflex, the kind that says everything. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The shift happened inside me first. A clean, sharp break. I saw her laugh at something on her screen, something that wasn't ours anymore. And in that moment I realized she had a whole other world built behind a passcode. A world I wasn't invited into. She glanced over and said, "Don't overthink it. He's just a guy from work." I nodded once. Calm. Steady. But something cold had already settled in my chest. I said, "Cool. I'm just the guy who used to care." She blinked, confused, maybe even offended. But I didn't give her time to reply. That was the night before I wasn't home. I didn't say anything the next morning, even though she acted like nothing had happened. She moved around the kitchen with that busy office week energy, packing her lunch, checking her emails, touching up her makeup with the same quick, practiced movements she probably used before those meetings where he sat across from her. I watched her from the hallway, noticing the small things I'd been blind to before. The way she smiled at her phone. The way she paused before replying, like she was choosing whether to include me in her day or keep me on the outside. She chose the outside. Her friend Megan texted her mid-breakfast, and I caught the notification. Something about tomorrow's carpool, and then a winking emoji. She laughed softly, then turned the screen away like it was instinct. That was the moment I knew someone had already filled the role I'd stopped knowing how to play. Before she left, she said someone from her office might drop off a report later, and she didn't want me to worry. That was how she said it. Don't worry. Like I was the problem. Like I was the one imagining things. She kissed my cheek out of habit more than affection, grabbed her bag, and left. I heard her car door close, and the house went quiet in a way I hadn't felt before. A few hours later, I stepped out to Home Depot for some supplies I didn't actually need. I just needed space. Needed a place where nobody lied with their eyes. Somewhere the world stayed simple. Wiring, switches, tools that said exactly what they were. I wandered the aisles longer than necessary, steadying myself. I wasn't angry. I wasn't panicking. I was observing. When I got home, her car wasn't in the driveway, but another one had been there earlier. A neighbor mentioned seeing some guy at the door, someone dressed too clean, too corporate. I didn't react. I just nodded, thanked him, and walked inside. Later that evening, she came home with a Sam's Club bag full of things for the house. Things she bought when she needed to cover gaps she didn't want to talk about. She avoided my eyes, busying herself in the kitchen. I realized she was giving me more answers in her silence than she ever had in words. That night, something subtle shifted in the way she held her phone. She kept it closer, screen angled away, fingers tighter around it. I wasn't even trying to look, but secrecy has a way of announcing itself without sound. I sat on the couch, pretending to watch whatever she put on Disney Plus, though the show barely mattered anymore. The glow flickered across her face while she typed rapid messages to someone she didn't want me to see. And still, I didn't say a word. When she went to shower, she left her bag on the table. Not her phone. She wasn't that careless anymore. But a receipt had slipped out. A long one, folded over itself, with items she'd never bought before. I didn't touch it at first. I told myself it wasn't my business. But when the water started running upstairs, the silence drew me in. I lifted the receipt with 2 fingers, just enough to read the line that told me everything I needed to know. Victoria's Secret. Something expensive. Something she hadn't worn around me. Something she hadn't even mentioned. I put the receipt back exactly as I found it. The cold inside me grew sharper, cleaner. It wasn't rage. It wasn't sadness. It was clarity. A few minutes later, her phone buzzed on the counter. I didn't move toward it, but I didn't have to. The preview lit up with a name I'd never seen. The same name I'd glimpsed the night before. Daniel. The message wasn't flirty or explicit. Just a simple line about how the report was finished and how he appreciated her staying late again. That word, again, hit harder than anything else on the screen. She came downstairs, acting normal, humming under her breath, placing groceries from Sam's Club on the counter like she was building a picture of domestic peace. She didn't notice how quiet I'd gone. She didn't notice that I didn't ask about her day. She didn't notice me at all, really. But I noticed everything. I saw the patterns, the gaps, the pieces sliding into place. And while she moved around the kitchen, rehearsing the same rhythms as always, I finally understood that whatever she had with him had already begun long before I realized it. I didn't confront her. I just started planning my disappearance. The next evening, the house felt different, like the walls were holding their breath. She came home later than usual, offering a quick explanation about getting stuck finalizing a report, the same report Daniel had thanked her for the night before. I didn't correct her. I didn't question anything. I just watched the way her keys shook slightly when she set them down, like her guilt had a pulse. She turned on Disney Plus again, letting the noise fill the space between us, but even she could feel that something in me had gone quiet in a new, unfamiliar way. While she showered, I gathered the things that actually mattered to me. My documents, a few clothes, my tools, the ones I kept in the garage, arranged in a way that made sense to me and nobody else. I loaded them into the truck slowly, methodically. No rush, no fear, just the calm of someone stepping out of a burning room without needing to look back. I didn't take much. That was the point. Leaving almost everything behind made the silence louder. Inside the house, her phone buzzed again. Not the short, random notification she used to get, but a long vibration, the kind that means someone typed more than they should have. I didn't look. I didn't need to. Her laughter had already told me enough. Her secrecy had finished the rest. I walked back in just as she came downstairs, wrapped in a towel, humming the tune she hummed when she was distracted or nervous. She didn't notice the missing things. She didn't notice how light the house suddenly felt. She only noticed that I wasn't looking at her the way I used to. She said she might stop by Sam's Club tomorrow, pick up a few things for the weekend. She said it like she was still pretending we were building something together. I nodded, steady, unreadable. She didn't see the shift because she didn't expect me to change. Not me. Not the man who always stayed, always fixed things, always absorbed the impact. But that version of me had already stepped out the door. By the time she fell asleep that night, I was gone. The truck was halfway down the highway, headlights cutting through the dark, and for the first time in years, the road ahead felt wide open. By the time the sun came up, I'd already turned my phone off, removed myself from every shared calendar, and signed out of the accounts where she'd grown used to seeing my location. Digital silence is cleaner than arguments. It doesn't echo. It erases. I parked the truck behind an old service building near the edge of town, a place where nobody would think to look, and just sat there for a while, letting the world go still. No calls. No messages. No version of me she could reach. A few hours later, I powered the phone on just long enough to back up my contacts and check one thing. The work chat she thought I never paid attention to. That's where I saw it. An internal thread where Daniel tagged her more often than necessary. Little check-ins disguised as professionalism. Compliments hidden behind data updates. Their pattern was obvious once I had the distance to see it clearly. I didn't reply. I didn't screenshot anything. I just closed the app and wiped every trace of myself from the shared cloud. She, meanwhile, went into full panic mode. Missed calls. Long voicemails. Messages asking where I was, what happened, whether something was wrong. Her tone shifted from annoyed to worried to something almost desperate. That alone told me how much control she thought she still had, and how quickly she realized it was gone. I spent the afternoon at Home Depot, walking the aisles without buying a thing. It was the one place that felt familiar, predictable. I watched couples argue quietly over paint colors, workers restocking shelves, a kid playing with a display drill. Normal life moved on without noticing me, and that was the point. I wasn't hiding. I was choosing where I existed. When I finally checked my phone again, she had sent a long message about someone stopping by the house earlier. She said it was just a misunderstanding, that she didn't want me to jump to conclusions. She wrote it like she still believed she could talk me back into the version of myself she depended on. I didn't respond. That evening, she sent one last message. She asked if I was coming home, but she already knew the answer. By the next morning, the silence had started working on her faster than any confrontation ever could. She showed up at my job site first, still in her work clothes, makeup rushed, eyes wide like she hadn't slept. The guys I worked with looked at her, then at me, waiting to see if I'd step toward her. I didn't. I wiped my hands on a rag, nodded once, and kept walking toward the breaker panel I was repairing. She followed me, asking if we could talk, saying she didn't understand why I'd disappeared. Her voice trembled just enough to tell me she finally felt what I'd been feeling for months. But I stayed focused on the wiring in front of me, letting her words fall into the dust at my feet. When she realized I wasn't giving her anything, she stepped back. That was when my foreman, an older guy named Collins, walked past her and said, almost under his breath, but loud enough for her to hear, "You really thought no one would notice?" He didn't look at her again. He didn't have to. She went pale. It wasn't judgment. It wasn't gossip. It was clarity, the kind she'd avoided by keeping everything hidden behind a passcode. Word travels fast in small crews, and even faster when someone's been showing up at a married woman's house while her husband is working overtime. The story had already reached people who didn't need details to understand what was happening. I didn't explain anything. I never denied anything. I kept working, letting the truth settle around her like dust. She stood there for a minute, frozen, then walked away without saying another word. Later that afternoon, I saw her car parked near Sam's Club. She was sitting inside, staring at her steering wheel, maybe rehearsing excuses or trying to figure out the moment everything slipped out of her hands. I didn't approach. I didn't watch for long. I just drove past without slowing down. That evening, she texted me a long apology, paragraphs of explanations, half-truths, and soft rewrites of history. She said she wanted to fix things, that she didn't want the house to feel empty. But emptiness was the space she created. I had only stepped out of it. She kept texting over the next few days, but her messages had changed. They weren't sharp or defensive anymore. They were slow, hesitant, careful, like someone tapping on a locked door, hoping it might open if they knocked softly enough. I didn't answer, not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I finally understood how quiet a man has to become before a woman realizes she's been speaking to him like he's furniture. Silence wasn't my weapon. It was my exit. I spent most of my days working long hours and my nights parked behind the old service building, the truck tucked out of sight. There was a strange peace in not being reachable, not being expected to show up anywhere, not being someone's emotional backup supply. My phone stayed off except in small windows where I checked for work updates. Every time I powered it on, there were more messages from her. Short ones at first, then long ones. Then voice notes she probably re-recorded a dozen times before sending. She said she felt lost in the house without me. She said Disney Plus kept auto-playing shows she couldn't stand to watch alone. She said she wanted to talk, to explain, to understand. But understanding was something she'd abandoned long before I walked out the door. One evening, near closing, I saw her standing in the Home Depot parking lot. She wasn't shopping. She wasn't waiting for anyone. She was just there, staring at the entrance like she thought I might walk out. She didn't see me sitting in the truck across the lot. She looked small in a way I'd never seen. Someone stripped of certainty, trying to hold herself together in a place that had always belonged to me more than her. She checked her phone, wiped her eyes quickly, then got back in her car and drove off. Later that night, she sent another message. She said she missed the way our evenings used to feel, how even the quiet moments had weight. She said she couldn't sleep without hearing me come home. She said she didn't understand what I wanted. But she did understand. She just didn't want to face it. I wasn't coming back to fill the silence she created. I had become the silence. She finally found me on a Thursday evening, though she didn't know it at first. I had parked the truck near an empty lot behind an old warehouse. eating a late meal I picked up from McDonald's. It wasn't comfort food. It was just fuel, something simple that didn't demand anything from me. She pulled into the lot slowly, her headlights gliding across the gravel, and for a second I thought she might just turn around and leave. But she saw the shape of the truck and froze. I didn't move. I didn't lower the window. I didn't signal for her to come closer. I just watched her step out of her car with the kind of caution people use when they approach something fragile. She walked toward me, trying to hold herself together, brushing hair from her face with a shaky hand. She stopped a few feet away, not daring to come closer without permission. She said she had been driving around for hours, hoping to find me somewhere familiar. She said the house felt like an echo chamber, that she tried putting on Disney Plus just to have noise, but every show reminded her of evenings that didn't exist anymore. Her voice cracked when she said she didn't understand why I wouldn't talk to her. She said she didn't know how to fix something she couldn't see. I didn't answer. I didn't open the door. I let the silence sit between us like a wall she finally had to acknowledge. Her breathing grew uneven, and she looked at me the way someone looks at a stranger they used to know intimately. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't cold. I was just not available. Not in the way she had counted on for years. She asked if I hated her. She asked if I was leaving for good. She asked why I couldn't just tell her what I needed. But my stillness was the answer. She had spent months confiding in someone else while I became background noise. Now she was the one talking into a void. When she realized I wasn't stepping out of the truck, she whispered that she was scared of losing me. But fear arrives too late when respect disappears first. The collapse didn't happen all at once. It came in small, sharp fractures that spread through her life faster than she could patch them. The morning after she found me in the empty lot, she tried to go to work like everything was normal. But normal had already left the house with me. I heard later, through people who didn't mean to tell me, that she arrived late, shaken, unfocused. Her manager asked if everything was okay. She just nodded, even though her hands wouldn't stop trembling. And when Daniel tried to joke with her the way he always did, she barely looked at him. Whatever connection she thought she had built with him didn't hold up under the weight of real consequences. By lunchtime, she was sitting alone in the break room, scrolling her phone like she was waiting for a message that wasn't coming. She replayed old videos, old pictures, trying to stitch together something familiar. When that didn't work, she opened Disney Plus on her phone, just to have some noise, but the sound felt wrong in a room that wasn't ours. She shut it off quickly, before anyone walked in and saw the panic behind her eyes. Meanwhile, I kept my distance. I worked another long shift, then stopped by Home Depot for a few materials I didn't need, just to stay in motion. I wasn't hiding from her. I wasn't watching her fall. I simply understood what she never did. When a man removes himself from the center of someone else's life, their world rearranges without warning. That evening, she drove to Sam's Club and wandered the aisles without buying anything. She picked up items, put them back, circled the same section twice. People around her didn't notice the way she looked unsteady, but she noticed. She texted me again before leaving, something short and fragile, saying she felt like everything was slipping out of her hands. I didn't respond. When she got home, the house felt colder than it ever had. She told me later that she sat on the couch in the dark, holding that receipt from Victoria's Secret like it suddenly meant something different, something heavy. She saw every moment clearly now, every warning she ignored, every silence she filled with the wrong person. And for the first time, she realized I wasn't lost. She was. She showed up one last time, not dramatic, not demanding, just there, standing outside the warehouse where I'd been finishing a late shift. The evening air was cold enough to sting, but she didn't seem to feel it. She looked smaller than I remembered, like the weeks of silence had carved something out of her. No makeup, no excuses rehearsed in her eyes. Just a woman who finally understood the cost of everything she'd taken for granted. She didn't try to touch me. She didn't try to cry her way back in. She just said she couldn't recognize the house anymore, that even playing old shows on Disney Plus felt like opening a window into a life she'd ruined herself. She said she'd walked through every room trying to feel grounded, but the silence hit her like a truth she couldn't soften. She said she kept thinking I'd walk through the door, or that she'd hear the truck pulling into the driveway. But the nights only got longer, and the house only felt bigger. I listened, but I didn't fill the space for her. I didn't rescue her from the weight of her own realization. She said she finally saw that the emotional connection she built with someone else wasn't harmless, wasn't innocent, wasn't just work. She said she saw the moment I stopped being the man she could lean on, not because I gave up, but because she handed the place I used to stand to another man without hesitating. She asked if I was gone for good. The wind moved between us, carrying whatever was left of who we were. I didn't step forward, but I didn't turn away either. I told her quietly that disappearing wasn't the point. I wasn't running. I wasn't punishing her. I was simply refusing to stand where I wasn't respected anymore. She nodded, slow and devastated, like she finally felt the full weight of that sentence. She said she wanted a chance to rebuild something real, something honest, even if it meant starting at the very bottom. I didn't promise her anything. I didn't pretend everything could go back to normal. I just said that respect had to come first this time. And then I walked past her, calm, steady, letting the silence speak for me. Real men don't explode. They exit. Subscribe for more power stories.